Here are the top 5 problems we think the U.S. are facing in this current time and age.
Number 5, providing a living wage. It wasn't until 1938 that a minimum wage was installed. At the turn of the century, the average railroad worker made 10 cents an hour as they soon began to fight for a livable wage.
According to a recent MIT study, the federal minimum wage is roughly 2/3 of what is needed for one person to sustain living. 3 members of a 4-person household would have to work an average of 68 hours a week at minimum wage to provide a sufficient standard of living. Number 4, the role of the federal government. Before America even had a constitution, we had a constitutional role that was set up by the federal government, and it was a matter of serious discussion before we even had an actual constitution of how much the federal government would play a role in the United States government. With the Civil War several decades in the past, the American identity was codified by the 20th century. This means that the American society had its own way of living and was pretty structured in the same way it is now. They also didn't want the government to overstep its own boundaries by getting involved too much in the people's lives.
The debate over how much power the federal government has had has always proven to be an issue. How much involvement they should have has always been disputed among the people. Number 3, protecting the environment. Popular legends hold Teddy Roosevelt as America's first conservationist. Well known as an outdoorsman, he greatly expanded America's national park system. He even served as the namesake of the so popular teddy bear.
When we talk about Teddy Roosevelt, not all of his statesmen shared his views. Timber and oil companies were furious at his plan to set aside land as protected forests, such as national parks and reservations. Oil and timber companies wanted access to the old-growth forests in the Pacific Northwest and also to the Florida Gulf. To them, it was more worth it to get the resources there than to protect the land in which the resources were hiding. Above all others, I think that the Keystone XL pipeline stands as the most high-profile issue over the last decade. It is thought that the pipeline would be an environmental disaster without any real payoff whatsoever. We're going to take a short intermission here. This is T-Bone Tyler Scott, and this is Ethan just back out of the prison yard, Miller.
We're going to do an interview today. What do you think the biggest issue today is in America?
Abortion.
Why do you say that? Come on, I need to know right now.
It's such a controversial topic. No one can agree on it.
Well, what's your thoughts on it?
I'm pro-life.
Why?
I don't know. Just have a baby. I don't know. People are gonna do what they want anyway. So.
And there you have it. Thoughts straight from the noggin of Ethan just off the jail yard Miller.
Number 2, gender equality. Discussions across equality in society have always been an issue in America. The progress over the last century of women's suffrage and women's rights has been remarkable. This was a large problem in the progressive era, though. Construction companies are now forced to hire women and pay them in their payroll.
Women were able to vote in 1920, and with pushes for organized labor to get better conditions for both male and female workers, they also wanted better pay for women. Now things are very different from what they were a century ago, but there are still very nagging gaps in pay and limitations and the progression in the job force.
Our number 1 issue is public education. By the beginning of the 20th century, many states already had public education. The progressive movement brought about a new level of standardization in public education.
Guided by Frederick Taylor's idea of scientific management known as Taylorism, advocated new schooling models to eliminate waste. The current debate of common knowledge in schools strongly echoes the ideals of this movement. This is a guideline for all students in the U.S., clearly identifying what all students should know.